Hello and welcome to Daily Dose Radio, a 5-minute-a-day podcast studying the Psalms verse by verse, recorded here in the dining room of the Bible Bistro, located in Sharonville, Ohio. Hey there, friend. Welcome back to Daily Dose Radio here in the Bible Bistro. Today, and all this week in the Bible Bistro, we're going to study Psalm 65. And before we open up our Bibles today, just want to remind you to check out the Bible Bistro on YouTube. You can just type in Bible Bistro on your YouTube channel, and you'll find us and all kinds of good stuff there. I hope you'll check that out. And while you're there, if you will like and subscribe, that would be wonderful. That'll help out all the algorithmic things that YouTube does. So today we're looking at Psalm 65, first two verses today. Let me just give you a little background about this psalm. First of all, we have the introduction, which tells us pretty much the same as what we had last week. This is of the choir master. It's a psalm of David. It's a song. So it's not only just poetic, but it's also meant to be sung. So this is a psalm, a song of David. This particular psalm is different than what we've had. Last week we had that beautiful chiasm psalm that was formed in the shape of a chiasm, which led us to a conclusion, because we talked about all the ways of the wicked, and then we looked at the other side of the coin, in a sense, in the second half of the psalm, and looked at what God is doing for the righteous. And so we're led to a conclusion that God cares for his people, and there are certain specific things that David talks about in that psalm that God does. And that psalm was also very much about the experience of the psalmist. Now we come to Psalm 65, and this psalm is not quite as involved with the psalmist's tale, because we only have the first person, either singular or plural, 3 times in this passage. We have one me, one us, and one we in this passage. So there's only 3 times that we have any kind of first person. This psalm is all about God, and I've entitled this psalm The 5 Characteristics of God, because we can break down the characteristics here into 5 different things. And so what this psalm does then, it's all about him, it's all about our God, and it's about his character. And there are 5 things that David points out as being a part of the character of God. So this psalm is very theological. It gives us a glimpse at the person of God. It talks about, well, we'll get into all the things that I'm going to try to preempt my lessons, but we're going to look at these 5 things. And the very first one we find here in verse 2. So allow me to read for you verses 1 and 2 today in Psalm 65. Praise waiteth for thee, O God, in Zion, and unto thee shall the vow be performed. O thou that hearest prayer, unto thee shall all flesh come. Notice that we have this wonderful description here of God. It's just beautiful, isn't it? So we have praise waiteth for thee, O God, in Zion. So in Zion, that is the heavenly Zion, the earthly Zion, whatever Zion you want to call it, God is going to be praised there. And I just want to say, let's take this to heaven, because that's where God's throne is, that's where his seat is, that's where his son reigns. And so we're going to look there at heaven, at Zion in heaven. Praise waits for thee. And in that place where God is worshipped, certainly there is praise. And then we have this first description of God. Number 1, in verse 2, thou that hearest prayer. O thou that hearest prayer. This is a wonderful title of God in the Psalms, isn't it? O thou that hearest prayer. Because, well, we just heard back in Psalm 64, what was his very first request? Hear my prayer. And so we've had that over and over and over again. The psalmist is saying, oh God, hear my prayer. Well, here we find out that the very first characteristic of God that David wants to mention to us, and of course, why wouldn't we find this as the very first characteristic that God that David mentions, is that he hears prayer. He is a great God, worthy of praise, but the thing that David wants to point out is that he hears prayer. O thou that hearest prayer, unto thee shall all flesh come. He is a great God. And the very first thing that you're going to find out about him from David is that he hears prayer. Well, I hope you'll join me again tomorrow. We'll pick up verses 3 and 4 here on Daily Dose Radio. Thanks for listening to Daily Dose Radio. For more fresh and delicious Bible studies, podcasts, books, and more, check out the Bible Bistro online and on YouTube. Join me again next time for Daily Dose Radio.